I have not even gone online yet to see the scale of damage that's been done in Southern California. I've seen some of it. I was watching it last night, but this morning I haven't gone to check. And the reason why is because I need to take a moment to praise God and to share with you some of the things that He's been teaching me and building in me, and also His great faithfulness when we finally just surrender to Him and let go of the work of our hands. Yesterday, the rain was coming down so hard. So I live in a little town that's near Pasadena, not far from Pasadena. In fact, it's literally down the hill. And we're not used to tropical storms or hurricanes or anything like that. But that rain was coming so steady. It wasn't hard rain. It wasn't violent rain. There were some times when the rain increased where it got a little bit more aggressive, but in general, it was steady rain. And so you hear it, you see it, and you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But it was steady rain. Like, there was a lot of water that was dumped. And I have 4 rain barrels in my yard, around my rain gutter downspouts, and I just kept emptying the rain barrels, and at a certain point they were filling up faster than I could empty them, and so they were overflowing, and they looked really pretty. They looked like they're kind of in the shape of like this like an urn, so it looked like a waterfall, but it wasn't really doing my foundation any good. It was just coming out faster than I could even deal with it. I even had the spigot opened so that, I did a thing where I had like the spigot opened and then it was pouring into a bucket, and then that bucket was pouring into something just to divert it away from the foundation and take some of the pressure off of the rain barrel to catch all that water. It was pouring. I've never seen the water back up in spots that it was backing up. And I think that in general, the drainage system that they implemented when they, engineered the house or the yard really is pretty good. It's decent for living on a mountain. So I don't really have like areas that pool up except for my back house, the back room of my back house. That one you can't even do anything about that because it's just on a slope and it slopes straight into the back house. In any event, I'm telling you all of that because what I've seen online it's just ridiculous. It's such wicked arrogance and unbelief. The people that they call climate deniers, and listen, people claiming that this is climate change, they're just as heretical because this is not climate change. But the people who say that this is not happening, it makes me wonder, like, what kind of deluded world are you living in? I saw people posting saying, well, I lived in Southern California in the 70s and, it was worse then. No, it wasn't. I've lived in Southern California my entire life. And, looking at the news, and you're seeing like all these floods and hearing that people are getting taken away in the torrent, cars are being swept away. What planet are people living on that they don't see that things are increasing? I mean, they just do not want to admit. And listen, I don't care about there's a lot of propaganda. There are a lot of people who stand to gain and are trying to capitalize on what's happening. And that's fine. Expose it. Expose that they're doing that. But to say that it's not happening and this is just propaganda is ridiculous. I live in Southern California. I did not even experience the worst of this tropical storm. God completely covered me. And yet that water was coming down faster than I could do anything with. I had tarps out. I was completely prepared for this as much as I could prepare. And I think the bottom line is you just can't convince people of truth who don't love truth, who don't want to know truth. They want to live in their own world and make up their own narrative, and you're never going to be able to convince them. The fact that they put it out there, though, just infuriates me. It's just so dumb. But I will tell you something else. People who claim to be of God, who are denying that this is going on, that's more detestable to me than anybody else. Because we know that wickedness is increasing, and concurrent with wickedness increasing, God's judgment is going to increase. So for God's people to be saying that this is all propaganda, that this is all political, is absolutely shameful. In any event, as I was going around my house and I was, trying to see what it was that I could do, it became very clear at a certain point as my urns, my water barrels were overflowing, and every bucket I tried to put, kind of divert it into was overflowing. It finally occurred to me that God is not allowing me by the work of my hands to do anything. I can't even put a dent in it. And you know what a freedom that is, to realize that I cannot do anything, that this is all in the hands of God, and that he will direct my steps. If he wants me to do something, he'll tell me to do it. And I've also been telling you about this humidity issue that I've been having in my house as a result of my AC, but in general, my house is pretty humid because my house is not on a raised foundation, it's on a slab, and I think slab houses are in general more humid, which makes sense because they retain more moisture. Not to the point where there would be any mold, there's no warping of my floors or smell or anything like that, but in general, they're more humid. And I have on my Nest system, I can see the humidity level. That's how I know that when my AC goes up, that my humidity also goes up. So that is a problem that needs to be remediated. But as far as the humidity is concerned, the humidity did not go up in my houses. In either one, it did not go up, even though there was 100% humidity outside. And in fact, it stayed sort of on the low end, like it didn't go up. And I know that God was demonstrating something to me. He was showing me that he can and will put up a hedge of protection around those who love him, around those who trust in him, and not in the work of their own hands, and not in whatever science or scientific principles in which man has placed their hope. Because frankly, the fact that I'm on a mountain, the fact that I have that my houses are on a slab, and my back house my back house is being drained straight into, the humidity should have gone up. So that is defying scientific principles. Is God able to do that? He most certainly is. So the only damage that really is, repairable, there was no real damage. There's just an inconvenience. One of my trees that's really very flexible toppled over because it got so heavy from the rain, but it didn't snap. And so I have an earth anchor on the way today, and I'll just anchor that tree down. The damage was really regular maintenance. I mean, I don't even think that there were more leaves on the ground than normal. My trash cans didn't even roll away. I brought my trash cans out because I had trimmed some limbs and I didn't want them to scratch my fence, so I brought them out to the street. My trash cans didn't even roll away. I mean, I've been through storms where I had to go find my trash can down the street. Everything is intact. None of my avocados fell, none of my apples, my figs. I had a few old lemons that were probably just stuck up in the tree because I could see that they were rotted. And he left behind a blessing. I mean, there were squash blossoms and there's roses that popped up. So there was something that, that he spoke to me years ago when I was writing the book, and he was talking with me about his wrath and the reign of the Antichrist, that even during the Antichrist reign, he's still commanding the storm. He's still sovereign. So that anything that's happening to you, you always turn to him. You always return to him because he is the one who is in control. Even though the Antichrist will be given power to reign, nothing can be done to you. Nothing can be done to you that he has not permitted. If that's hard for you to understand, you got to read the story of Job and you got to rend your heart and return to him. Sort it through with him. He permitted and even asked Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Everything that was brought on Job was brought by God. And when Job started multiplying his words and God finally did respond to him, he said, who is this who obscures my plans with words without knowledge? My plans. So he has a plan. And I shared with you that for weeks, even before I knew that there was a hurricane coming, God's been preparing me for this. He's been preparing my heart for exactly what he was building in me, exactly what he planned to build, to bring me even lower, to crush me so that I could have that peace in knowing that I am not in control, that I had intended to anchor my pergola to the concrete because that's like a normal kind of common sense thing that people would do. And yet sometimes God tells us not to do things because he wants to reveal his glory. He wants to reveal that he will and can pass over us. Well, that's kind of a scary thing to sit and say, okay, like you've taken away my income. And yet if that pergola blows right into my house, it's going to be my own fault. Insurance isn't going to cover that. And I don't have income coming in to cover the damage. So I have to know that you're going to do this. But also, if I disobey him and I go do something by the work of my hands, I know that if I do that, he will send judgment because I didn't believe in him. And I told you that I was on the way to the hardware store. I was in my car to go get that drill bit for the concrete. And he seized me in pain so bad that I had to pull over for a good 20 minutes, just pull over. He would not let me get that drill bit. And that was a couple weeks ago. That was before I even knew about this hurricane coming to Southern California. So I just want to share that experience with you, that testimony, and also take a moment just to praise God for doing what he does and for being faithful to those who love him and to those who trust him. He did not touch my house except to protect it. The thing that was really profound to me in reading those comments, because I wanted to see what are people thinking, what are they saying? And, they like to make fun of the people who say, like, this is God's judgment, you guys, we need to return. They love to make fun of those people, right? Those people, us people. They love to say, this isn't a big deal, it's all propaganda, I've been through worse, everything else. It is a big deal. This is a big deal. And God is calling his people in. My daughter's town, I haven't even walked through my town or driven through my town to see if there was any damage. And like I said, I haven't looked this morning to see, what's been done. But in my daughter's town, she sent me pictures of trees being totally uprooted. I've seen terrible flooding. And, while I'm over here obeying things that defy worldly sense, I suppose, in favor of obedience and trust in a sovereign God, the people online making these comments are trusting in what? The work of their own hands? We can't even save ourselves. The work of their own hands. And talking about how engineers should have done things this way. Everybody becomes an expert. What do you think their fate is? What do you think the fate is of the arrogant? Don't say that this is judgment. The word tells us what the fate of the arrogant is. The pride of Ephraim's drunkards. And what God is going to do to foil their plans and foil their science and foil whatever it is that they have placed their hope in. They can't even save themselves. They will be swept away with the torrent for thinking that they have this by the work of their own hands. God does not bring grief willingly. You can greatly reduce your grief, the grief that you experience, by returning and perceiving and obeying. So please perceive what's going on. I know you're not all in Southern California, but look, God's doing a thing right now, and I talked to you about it about 4.5 weeks ago. I told you were going to see massive devastation. You would see it with your own eyes, and that it would feel like it was coming crashing down on your head. Did God do that with me? Because I feel like he did. The days leading up to this and the position that he put me in, telling me, do not anchor that to the concrete, you are to trust in me. I had to work on some things in my heart. I had to work on whatever's left inside of there of me trusting in the work of my own hands or wanting to rely on that. You're going to make yourself crazy. I was making myself crazy going around my property to those 4 barrels. What am I going to do? He can just send more rain to foil what I'm doing. And that's exactly what he's going to do with the wicked. But those who trust in him will never be stricken with panic. So that's my message to you this morning. I hope it comforts you. I hope it encourages you, because I know we're living in a time where people just don't believe what I'm saying to you right now. They don't believe these things. They don't believe that God is actually sovereign. They have the appearance of godliness, but they deny his power. They say things like, God helps people who help themselves. We can't help ourselves. We can be accountable, but there's a different kind of work that God requires. We can't help ourselves. We can't save ourselves. That is not what the word says. What the word says is that God watches over those who love him, who respect him, who trust in him, not those who help themselves. That is a satanic message, and it is intended to cause you to minimize the power of God, to actually not trust in his sovereignty, and to trade our sovereign God for faith in the work of our own hands as our own God. Thank you for listening. Please discern this message with God.